Hi, friends. Thank you so much for being here. Wonderful to see everyone, and especially with Hanukkah coming in tonight. And a perfect theme, although it's not a Hanukkah class, finding light within darkness, spreading light within darkness is so crucial all the time. And we can certainly use light at a time like now. And we're thrilled to be learning again with Melanie Gruenwald, the second of three classes together, and to be partnering with our great partners, Beth El. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Rabbi Nitzan Stein-Koken, to introduce our scholar today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, welcome, everyone. Chagorim Sameach, happy Hanukkah. Already this morning in Talmud, we discussed how can we find that miracle and that light in our days. So we're very excited to have Melanie Gruenwald here. Gruenwald, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a German speaker. So you are so welcome. Thank you for giving us this shiur at this time, this lesson at this time with such a topic. Just a little bit of your background. Melanie is the executive director of Kabbalah Experience and brings over 25 years of nonprofit leadership and community organizing to her position. Engaged with senior citizens, families, college students, and teens, Melanie has extensive professional experience with communal leadership and informal Jewish education. She's energized by building relationships, understanding people's needs, and finding ways to connect them to one another. She loves the balance of organizational leadership and teaching, which she engages on a daily basis at Kabbalah Experience. She earned her BS in psychology from Binghamton University and a master's in social work and a certificate in Jewish communal service from the Wurzweiler School of Social Work at Yeshiva University. Melanie has pursued additional Judaic and spiritual studies at the Pardes Institute of Jewish Studies, the Conservative Yeshiva, and most recently, Kabbalah Experience. She's married to Rabbi Solomon Gruenwald, Associate Rabbi at Hebrew Educational Alliance, and is a mom of 3 children, Kobe, Zichrono Livracha, Hannah, and Micah. Melanie, please bring us the light.
Thank you. And thank you to Rabbi Shmuley and Alex and your congregation, Beth El, and Rabbi Nitzan for welcoming and hosting us today. So thank you all for being here. It's wonderful. I love connecting with Valley Beit Midrash. I have to say, I was watching some videos from previous lectures to prepare for today, just to say, I can teach, but what's everybody else doing? And it's just really the breadth and depth of knowledge and experience and energy that's presented in your community is just wonderful. So thank you for bringing VBM to all of us, and I'm really honored to be part of it. It's great to have some friends here, a cousin, and some folks I don't know. So thank you all for joining today. Our topic is finding light in darkness, and whether it's this time of year, it's December and it's dark, or it's the way we're experiencing the brokenness of the world right now, or it's just life sometimes feels a little bit broken. It's always good to have the opportunity to be reminded about what does Jewish tradition say about finding light in darkness, and how can we find some meaning in this time? So when I teach, I like to start from the very beginning. Where do we even hear about light and darkness in Jewish text, in Torah text? And the way I like to teach is to invite you to join us by sharing the reading. So Wendy Rossoff, would you be kind enough to read the English here with these 2 sources from Genesis?
The earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water. God called the light day and called the darkness night. And there was evening and there was morning, a first day.
Thank you. Okay, so where do we start in creation? What's from the beginning of the text? What are we starting with? What's our
nothingness, chaos.
right? And we start with darkness, right? We start with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water. So apparently we have darkness and we have water, right? And then we move forward just a few verses. And what does God call the light?
Day, and the darkness is night.
No, exactly. Right. So we start with the darkness, and from the darkness comes the light and the daytime. And then from that separation, we see, so now the light is day, the darkness is night, there's evening and there's morning, first day. How do Jews celebrate time? How do we mark time?
It's sunset.
Right. We begin with darkness. Right. Why do we begin with darkness and go into light? Why don't we start with the boker and then the evening?
Because it says evening instead of day.
Right. But how do we experience time differently? Tonight, when the sun sets, we're going to be lighting our menorah, our Hanukkah. Why?
We begin with darkness because we're a lunar calendar.
Okay, that's part of it. And how else do you just even viscerally experience time when you're starting a holiday or a festival at nighttime with darkness?
We light candles.
Right. And what is that experience like in darkness when we start lighting candles?
It brings a sense of holiness and like it's something different, like it's a complete separation from the previous time. You go into the regular day and all of a sudden it's Shabbat and you light the candles. It's just a different feeling. It takes you into another realm.
Right. And we're experiencing day. We're experiencing the busyness of our day and our life. And then the sun sets, it's darkness. It could be scary. If there's a beautiful midrash of teaching about Adam and Eve on the first night that they experienced darkness and they thought it was the end of the world. And then the sun set and then the sun rose and they said, oh, so this is the order of the world, right? First we have darkness and then we'll have light, right? And when we're engaged not only in experiencing the cycle of time, but we're lighting candles, we're bringing light to the darkness. It also gives us some kind of connection to control, to bring light into what might otherwise seem dark and unmanageable for us. Right. So our next source is from Howard Schwartz. He's an amazing storyteller. And this is how he's explaining darkness and light. Rebecca, would you be able to read that, please?
I hope you mean this, Rebecca.
Yes, I do. Thanks.
At the beginning of time, God's presence filled the universe. When God decided to bring this world into being, to make room for creation, they first drew in their breath, contracting themselves. From that contraction, darkness was created. And when God said, "Let there be light," as says in Genesis 1:3, the light that came into being filled the darkness, and 10 holy vessels came forth, each filled with primordial light. In this way, God sent forth those 10 vessels like a fleet of ships, each carrying its cargo of light. Had they all arrived intact, the world would have been perfect. But the vessels were too fragile to contain such a powerful divine light. They broke open, split asunder, and all the holy sparks were scattered like sand, like seeds, like stars.
Thank you. Right. So Howard Schwartz is referencing here the story of the concept of creation, the process of creation through the lens of Lurianic Kabbalah. So according to Isaac Luria, at the beginning of the time, and what the rabbis struggled with, if God was everywhere and everything, how did the infinite create space for the finite to exist? So what he's saying here is God's presence filled the universe. And when God decided to bring this world into being, to make room for creation, he withdrew, right? He contracted contracted God's self and said, "Let there be light." And the light came to fill the darkness, and 10 holy vessels came forth. So I always picture Chihuly glass bulbs, right? Or bubbles, that these holy vessels came forth, which references Sfirot, the tree of life. And they were each traveling, carrying the light energy that was a source of creation, the Ein Sof, that without end is contained in each of these vessels. But the energy was so intense, the vessels were too fragile and they shattered. They couldn't handle that powerful divine light anymore. And that's what we call the Shevirat HaKlalim, the shattering of the vessels. And our job in this world, you might be familiar with the term Tikkun Olam, right? Tikkun, repairing the world. Our job is to pick up these shards of light and put it back together again. So these holy sparks were scattered like sand, like the seeds, like the stars. So how is Howard Schwartz here bringing us back to Genesis from God saying, let there be light? So there was darkness, and then he said, let there be light, and the light filled the darkness. Then what happened according to Howard Schwartz?
The way it gets disseminated into the world is kind of like not direct, but very indirect.
Yeah, right. He's filling these vessels and then they shatter, right? And then it's out there, right? Everything's connected. What else are you all noticing about that? Does anything else jump out at you, Judy?
They were contained, and after the shattering, they were uncontained. It also required God to separate them at that point.
Right. So how do you see that playing out in our world today?
Well, in Judaism, we're called to draw distinctions. So that's us imitating God by separating the light from the darkness.
Beautiful. Right. I mean, that's what the Havdalah ceremony is about at the end of the Sabbath, right? The idea of we light the candle. Again, when it gets dark, we light the candle and we're separating the holy from everything else. Right? It's the light becomes a source of separation. Nice connection. So here's another teaching from the Zohar. Marty, would you read this one for me, please?
There's no greater light than the light which emerges out of the greatest darkness.
Right. So again, the idea of, is the light more apparent when we're seeing it from a dark place? How do we experience light from light versus light from darkness? How does that show up for you?
We can have one without the other.
Right. Right. We wouldn't have shadows, right, if we didn't have light and darkness. They're intertwined. Everything is connected. This is a beautiful reading from Roger Kamenetz about the tablets, the 10 Commandments. But if you remember the story, Moses went up to the top of Mount Sinai. He got the 10 Commandments. He came down. The Israelites had built the golden calf, right? And then he threw them on the ground and they were shattered. But even though they were shattered, the broken pieces of the tablets were carried in the ark across the desert. They were carried in the ark to make it to Israel. So Wendy Davis, would you read this poem for me, please?
The broken tablets were also carried in an ark, insofar as they represented everything shattered, everything lost. They were the law of broken things, the leaf torn from the stem in a storm, a cheek touched in fondness once, but now the name forgotten. How they must have rumbled, clattered on the way, even carried so carefully through the wasteland. How they must have rattled around until the pieces broken into pieces, the edges softened, crumbling, dust collected at the bottom of the ark, ghosts of old letters, old laws. Insofar as a law broken is still remembered, these laws were obeyed, and insofar as memory preserves the patterns of broken things, these bits of stone were preserved through many journeys and ruined days, even, they say, into the promised land.
But how many broken things, right? Whether it's items or memories or hearts or experiences, right? Do we carry with us in the ark of our body? Right? I find this metaphor really interesting. I'd love to hear, what do you think? What is evoked for you while you're reading this or seeing this poem?
I feel like if taking sort of all three parts together, this idea that you sort of have to break to experience illumination within yourself that you can then spread further, like the vessels sort of had to break, otherwise they wouldn't have dispersed the light in the necessary manner. And just this idea that unless you've experienced some kind of brokenness, you can't see what you need to understand to then spread the light.
Wow. Right. And we don't know our wholeness until we experience brokenness.
Yeah.
But perhaps like the darkness comes before the light, does the brokenness come before the wholeness?
I like the part about the softening of the edges and kind of like the sand on the bottom. But I also like the part about so that, they're not quite as harsh and rough, as when originally formed. But I also like that we still preserve them and we still carry them and we still honor them almost, hold them. And it's okay for them to be there. So that's like, we don't throw them away. They're important to have.
Right. And in Kabbalah, we teach, right, the past exists. The past is always going to inform our present. We just don't want to get stuck in it. Right. So when we're bringing the broken pieces of the past along, right, the edges might soften, the dust might settle, the pain, the edges of that might settle a little bit, right? But it's always going to be carried with us. So far as the memory preserves a pattern of broken things, these bits of stones were preserved. In what ways does that play out in our lives today?
I think it's like family trauma, but also family good times. It just, I read this and I just think of my generations and generations of ancestors who lived in the Pale settlement in Poland, all dreaming of going to the land of Israel. And I was the one who had the fortune, lived long enough when Israel was happened. But it's all our memories, all the memories of the pogroms, the Holocaust, also of Shabbatot and Chagim. That's how I see it. It's just an unbroken chain of broken and unbroken moments in life.
Mm-hmm. I like that image of a chain. Thank you. So here we think about our brokenness, right? I have a couple of things in my house that are broken. One is a piece of pottery that a friend gave me. I'm just thinking maybe I should glue it back together, or I don't know, right? And over Thanksgiving, another dish was broken. So now I have a pile of my broken dishes, right? But whenever I take out my dishes to serve, right, I don't want to put out the bowl with the chips in it, right? I want to put out my whole and my beautiful pieces. But it's really interesting to see here what is our experience of brokenness and wholeness. So Judy, would you read this piece from the Midrash, please?
When a man uses a broken vessel he is ashamed of, but not so God. He is ashamed of it, but not so God. All the instruments of his service are broken vessels, as it is said, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, or who heals the brokenhearted.
Right, so what's the teaching here from the Midrash?
God's not embarrassed by our brokenness. God is close to us because we are broken.
And we're all broken.
It makes me think of all the provisions about priests and sacrifices, where if anything has even the slightest blemish, a priest with a crushed testicle can't offer a sacrifice. This runs contrary to that.
Mm-hmm. So how would you find some balance in that?
I would suggest that these things hint at God being more pleased by the sacrifices coming from the broken priest than from the unbothered priest.
The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, right? We're not rewarded for being full of hubris, right? Full of pride. We're rewarded for humility and for experiencing life, right? We can't sit in the Holy of Holies and be protected all the time, right? When we go out and we live our lives, that's when we have friction. That's when we have dissonance. That's when we get the chips in our nails and think about the dirt under our nails from gardening.
Excuse me. It seems to me that younger people who feel that they are immortal and nothing bad will happen and all of those good things are not as open to God experiences as those of us who are older and who are willing to overlook some of the imperfections of the world, or who are imperfect themselves and don't expect to be perfect, that we are more open to God and to religion.
Maybe. I mean, at least the people who are showing up here, right? Yeah. That we do, the more we experience life, the more we recognize how little control we actually have, right? That there is beauty in the brokenness.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah,
Can I make
please.
a comment on that? Hi, this is Robin Steinecker. I don't have my camera on, and I probably could. I'm actually a pediatrician and deal with a lot of these young kids, and I think a lot of this is what they portray as what is perfect, and what they are inexperienced in, and what they don't understand what it would be like if they didn't look perfect to everyone. So it's experience, it's social media, it's pressure from parents. There's a lot of things that go into that. Of course, experience, but I feel like the people think that they should be perfect and unbroken when that's really not healthy. Like, you really can't move forward until you admit that you are, that there's things that need to be fixed.
Beautiful. Thank you. Are you in a place that you could read our next piece, Robin?
Yes, although I don't have to my my camera here. Hold on. Yes, I can. I will. Here we go. Okay. A man of flesh and blood, if he has a vessel, so long as the vessel is whole, he is happy with it. But not so the Holy One, blessed be he. So long as the vessel is whole, he does not wish to see it. Broken, he wishes it. And what is the favorite vessel of the Holy One? Blessed be he, the heart of man. If the Holy One sees proud heart, he does not wish it. As it is said, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Broken, he said, this is mine. As it is said, the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart.
Thank you. All right, so same time, around the 3rd century. All right, so what's the connection here between the man using a broken vessel and then the metaphor of a man, of a human, right? God saying, if the vessel is whole, he doesn't wish to see it. God wants to see the vessel broken. His favorite vessel is the broken one.
Can I just ask, what does it mean by proud? Like, what's the Hebrew use word that would be there? Does it mean arrogant? Does it mean too self-concerned? What does pride actually mean in this this sentence?
That's a good question. I'll look it up on Sepharia while we are chatting about that. I'll reference the link. If you're not familiar with Sepharia, I encourage you to learn about it. And we could look up the Hebrew and find out exactly what they're saying here. How does it read to you? Like, if you were the translator, how would you understand it? Oh, here it says haughty. Avad Adonai kol geva lev geva. So every haughty person is the word that they're using here.
Thanks. Yeah, so it's not really pride. It's the opposite of humility. Like, it's a complete lack of humility. It's being overconfident in oneself.
Okay.
Which is a problem. One could see that Hashem wouldn't like that. As far as Hashem preferring those with broken heart, I don't know. Are we always... To be Jewish is to have a broken heart. Especially now, my God, we're like one body with one big broken heart. I don't know. I can't answer that.
No.
Maybe it's preferable. If it said humility, I could understand. But to be like beyond humility, but actually broken, that's a pretty awful place to be.
Yeah, I mean, and it is true, right? Especially now, we feel that with our brothers and sisters in Israel. You see one child taken hostage and you feel like it's part of your own family. And why? But what's the thread that we're seeing here between these two readings?
Well, I think that the second paragraph is the Midrash is saying, like, God really wants to be doing tikkun olam, and that's what he wants us to be doing. And if we are haughty in terms of we think we are not broken in any way, we don't have to fix ourselves in any way, then God doesn't like that. And so that's how I hear the second paragraph. And sort of the first one in a way talks about man's pride in a way. being
Yeah, we all-
ashamed of using a broken vessel.
Right, we all have work to do. So here's another poem. This is from Rashani. I've actually found it in this book by Estelle Frankel that I often reference about sacred therapy. It's amazing. This was part of a meditation about light and darkness, and the idea that we all experience this brokenness. If someone who's not on video but wants to help read, I'm happy to call on you. I just can't tell in what ways you're able to show up at the moment. Toby Schmick, would you like to read? I'm going to go back to you, Wendy. Oh, there you are, Toby.
Yeah.
All right, Wendy.
I'm sorry.
Back to you, Toby. Hi, nice to see you.
Okay, I'm reading The Unbroken.
Yes, please.
There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. There is a hollow space too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss.
No, the typo. Out of whose
out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside, which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing.
Thank you. All right. So what are we learning here about the brokenness and the wholeness?
It's a growth cycle.
In what way?
Well, I don't know which is first, the brokenness or the, I think the brokenness precedes the blooming or the growing of the unbrokenness, that having your heart broken or having something bad happen to you or to someone you care about is an opportunity, although you may not see it as such when it's happening, but it's an opportunity to grow in a new way.
Right. How much we can learn from retrospect, right? From the rearview mirror.
Yeah, except you have to get far enough away from it that you're not devastated by it.
Right. Right. Or also recognizing that when we're most broken, that's when we have the opportunity for healing. There's the teaching that says, even when we have a broken arm, right, where it heals, where the scar forms is actually stronger than how it was before. The scar makes the bone stronger.
Yeah.
There's that Japanese art as well of broken pottery. Yeah. They seal back together with gold, right? And it's more valuable because it's been broken, because it's had the opportunity to heal and be healed. Right. So how does that tie back to our conversation about these vessels from the 3rd century?
It's no different than our hearts.
We're all going to have some brokenness. And perhaps the darkness comes before the light, right? Perhaps we have to be broken before we can heal. Thinking about planting a simple seed, it has to disintegrate before the green comes out, before the tree emerges and the leaves and the apples form, right? We all have to break down a little bit before we can be stronger and wholer and more complete. But it's out of the darkness we were sanctioned into being, right? Out of the darkness came that light.
It's Leonard Cohen's "There's a Crack in Everything," and that's where the light comes in.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah, that makes sense from that viewpoint.
Yeah, and we always talk about this idea of hidden in plain sight. Right? When the room is light, everything just seems light. We can't differentiate light from darkness when we're in the light room. But if we shut the overhead, the fluorescence off, and we just have a lamp, right, then we see the light in the darkness.
It's like black and white films. I love the older black and white films because the use of shadow and light, it's so much more interesting and more artistic. Even the way they shine on a face or on a figure, it's really terrific. And the various shades of gray and the differences, there's a lot to be said for that. So I think that's also the whole idea of dark and light, shadow and light.
Yeah, and that actually makes me think of the teaching about white fire on black fire, right? That there's a teaching that says the Torah is white fire on black fire, and that the letters on the ink that's written on the parchment is actually the negative space rather than the other way around. And in the white fire is where we find the white space, the white parchment between the letters is where we find the interpretation. It's where we find ourselves. It's where we find our stories. And that's why when we read the Torah every year over again, right, we get back to the beginning. We're reading the same black text, but it's a white fire that's giving it the depth and the story and the interpretation for us. Right? So it's interesting when you connect that to the white and black and white films.
There was, I remember seeing an exhibit of an Israeli artist in the museum in Tel Aviv, and he did everything in terms of negative space. He would put out sand and then capture the moment. One exhibit was a wedding. So he had everybody in there like a wedding, like a chuppah, and people standing there. And then what you saw was the marks in the sand. So it was, I think, all about memory. It was the impression that the negative space. It's very interesting. And really, I'm trying to think of the word in English, mitragesh, very emotional, very, very feeling.
Nice. Thank you. Jana. Hi. I know another Jana Warner from Los Angeles.
Oh, really?
Like, you don't look like her. All right. So welcome. Would you read us these few paragraphs from Estelle Frankel, please?
If we can find a way to hold and embrace our pain gently, recognizing that brokenness is simply part of the human condition, then we may begin to feel empathetically connected to all other beings. This is the broken heart that makes us whole. Jewish spiritual healing is essentially about breaking out of the narrow prison of our own personal heartbreak to enter the heavenly palace of compassion and connection. It is about how the human heart can be broken open so that the veils that keep us separate from one another and our connection with the divine can be removed. The truth is, it's all about connection. Whether we bare our soul before the divine or our personal pain becomes a point of connection with others, when we feel part of a greater whole, we experience a sense of joy and well-being. When we feel disconnected from ourselves and others and separate from the whole, what in religious terms we refer to as God, we suffer. The Hebrew word for oneness, ehad, I guess, Hebrew, comes from the same root as the word for joy, chevda, or hevda. We experience joy when we feel a sense of oneness and connectedness. This is the central aim of all Jewish spiritual healing, to restore a sense of unity, joy, and connectedness in a world in which brokenness seems inevitable.
Okay, so following this thread, right? Darkness came before light. The light emerges from the darkness. The shattered tablets, right, whose edges soften, and we carry their dust and we carry the pieces with us as we journey through the desert. It's the idea that we're all a little bit broken. We don't have to be perfect. We're not expected to be perfect. You know, and there's the idea that we're all pieces in one another's puzzle. Like that when we're showing up, the 18 of us have never been together in one space together ever in this universe, right? But this moment, each of you are necessary to be here. Right? So it's all about connection. When we're connected with other people, we're part of a greater whole, she says. Right? When we're disconnected from ourselves and separate from others, that's when we suffer. So how do we begin to bring light into the darkness? How do we begin to see the light in the brokenness that's around us? What's coming up for you as we head into this first night of Hanukkah?
For me personally, I'm thinking about two other things that I've learned about actually that connect to this. This is maybe all a little esoteric, but one is I learned recently that the Camus' definition of freedom is nothing but a chance to be better, is his definition. So essentially like your ability to grow, improve, make choices that evolve and progress your life and the life of others. So it's the opportunity to do that. And then I heard I think she's the head rabbi of France, like the Rabbi Emeritus of France or whatever her title is. And she was saying how the word for freedom in Hebrew is derivative of the same word as void. And just basically this idea that freedom is the opportunity to progress and continue forward, even when it seems sort of impossible or broken, or like something needs to be fixed before you can proceed. But like in my mind, those two, that passage that we just read, this definition of freedom and this sort of concept of imperfection or void is just basically that in order to bring light, it's just really a matter of personal choices and decision and sort of the power of choice, the power to sort of take control of the circumstance and your own capacities to like make the choice to make things better, and just sort of overall the power of choice is like the power to illuminate if you make good choices.
Nice. Thank you. And reflecting back the light we see in others, right? To manifest that light in the world.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. What else is coming up?
Connectedness, that like you say, you see the light in others, like we're having a few places, I'm in Toronto, we have a few places where Chabad is hosting a large Hanukkah menorah and lighting for the public. And that bringing people together, is something very, very joyful. And even the knowledge that, while I'm lighting my candles, people throughout this Eastern Standard Time are lighting their candles, and then the next, people will be lighting their candles. And that's how you spread the joy, and also the comfort that you get from people being together. I got a email from my cousin in Israel, and she's just talking about how people are coming together, hosting people who have been evacuated, groups of people whose kids are in the IDF have formed groups, to come together and share emotions. And that's what it is to be human, just to share and connect.
Yeah. Right. And Jewish tradition teaches us about being in community, right? We're not meant to sit alone on a mountaintop having our experiences, right? We're meant to be with other people. That's how we heal. That's how we find wholeness. So what else is coming up for y'all based on these texts and the idea of coming from the darkness to find the light, coming from the brokenness to find the wholeness? What's showing up for you?
I keep thinking of Vincent van Gogh.
Okay.
His choice to put a vibrant yellow next to a purple or a dark blue, and how that makes his paintings so evocative and strong and also disturbing, and that he was a very disturbed person, but he brought so much joy and so much connectedness for those of us who admire his work.
Interesting. So, right. So even through art, we can experience this. What other questions, comments, reflections do you have as we head? I know personally coming now 2 months into this war in Israel. Today it's 2 months. It's December 7th. The moments of hope and light, hopelessness and dark, brokenness, healing, the ways people are finding connection and creating light. I think we're carrying that with us into this first night of Hanukkah. I feel that. And as we are parts of these vessels that have shattered, and the light is out there waiting for us to bring it back together, what can our role be? What's our imperative as we head into this week of miracles and action?
I'm thinking of Peter, Paul, and Mary's song, "Don't Let the Light Go Out." How important it is for everyone to light. I remember when the war started, and we were told, to light Shabbos candles and to really go out there and do mitzvot to make the world a better place and a brighter place. And I think it's our imperative to light tonight and every night, and just to continue to bring that into the world.
Nice. Thank you. Right. What else?
I think it's important to have gratitude. I think that's the way we've done it a lot in my family. Is every Shabbos we would go around the table and say what we were grateful for that week. And no matter how bad of a week it was, we always find something that we were grateful for. And I think that helps to find light in the darkness.
What else is coming up?
Community, be there for each other. As Jews, go to Hanukkah programs, go to shul, invite people over for Shabbat. Just the warmth that we can give each other and the light that we spread by being part of a community and helping each other.
In our foundational Kabbalah classes, in one of the weeks, we talk specifically about light and darkness. And we talk about Joseph, right? Joseph, we read about Joseph in this time of year in the Parsha, in the Torah portion. And he had to go into the darkness to come back into the light, right? And it's particularly interesting in this month that we celebrate Hanukkah, right? It's the darkest time of year. It's when we have to work the hardest to manifest this light, to bring that light back out. So it's a good teaching where we're looking at light, gratitude, community, warmth, right? That we should find ways to come together like this, express our gratitude, our care for the people that we know and for the people we don't know, right? The people that aren't in our immediate circles, and find ways to spread warmth and light this time of year. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to pass it back to Alex. And one of the traditions in yoga class, you say namaste, right? That the light in me sees the light in you. So namaste, Hag Sameach, happy Hanukkah. Thank you for being here. And back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Melanie, and thank you all for joining us and learning with us today. I know we already had a lot of chance for discussion and questions. I just want to give one kind of final call if there are any remaining questions or comments before we wrap up. Okay. Well, want to wish you all a very happy Hanukkah. And we actually have a great Hanukkah program coming up next week. We will be hosting Rabbanit Leah Sarna on December 14th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time for her virtual event. But what if I love the Greeks? Hanukkah for philosophers. So we hope you can all join us for that as well. And have a very happy Hanukkah. Thanks for being here.